Hi, kitty cats. Is it possible to create or recreate who we are in this world? And I don't mean just gender transition, but completely starting our identity over from scratch? Well, I say yes. My name is Amethysta. I'm an author and a podcaster. You can check the links that keep cycling below for more information on the work that I do. You'll see my personal website, amethysta.io. You'll find information about my social media networks and also about the gender coaching that I do. Hello, Phoenix Lizard Man. So please follow me for updates on everything I do. My professional website also comes up here. That's genderidentitytoday.com. All of my articles, my podcasts, my live streams get published there, as well as work from other contributors. If you like this particular content, you will be able to subscribe on Gender Identity Today for as low as like $2 a month. It's pretty cheap. And if you'd like to contribute, I certainly hope you would reach out to me through my personal website, and I would love to publish your content. So the last one here, which is showing up right now, it's a coffee link. If you want to drop me a tip, that would be really much appreciated. Thank you so much. All right. So the topic today is identity from scratch. Oh my gosh. Do we have the same hair? That sounds great. 1776 has already told me to leave the children alone. All right, I'm not talking to children here. If you're not a child, then we're good here. So, I got a comment from a viewer the comment started off with, in learning to hide within reality, and then talked about how to create a new identity, especially using role-playing games, and then asked me these two questions. The first, do we have to recertify our truth daily? Do we have to recertify who we are? And then also asked, how would we defeat falsehoods going on in reality? So in this question from this comment, there were several topics to cover. The first is, who controls our identity? Who controls who we are? I've already got two comments that are saying apparently they think they control identities, and they don't want me to help, discuss these kinds of things. So who controls your identity? How can we explore our identity? And then also, how do we make our reality real? And then finally, what if we have to change other people's minds about who we are? So let's go ahead and start with, who controls our identity? All right, so I want to start off with an assertion of truth here, especially given that, I've got somebody who just said, you can't change your identity. That's pretty interesting. So I'll start off with an assertion of truth. You are the one who controls your identity, period. You own your identity. Society does not. This John B. here who can't help... Hang on, I'm gonna divert for a moment. Somebody has just left me the comment, Trump 2024. You do realize the election was earlier this week, right? I mean, you were supposed to have voted already. Like, don't go now, because the polls are closed, but you're way more than a day late and a dollar short. So, moving back to the point here, you control your identity, society does not. What you are responsible for is learning how to express who you are within your social environment. And that I think is the real question that the viewer was asking. Because as well as how do we express ourselves within our social environment, we also want to ask the question, is it moral to express who we are? Somebody has just asked me if I have a can. I do, I have 2 cans. Thanks, I appreciate that. So before I talk about morality, I want to make clear as well, only you can define your motivations, your desires, your goals, because only you can know what they are. Now, it's great that I've got a bunch of people, doing nothing more than dropping me crummy contents about being childless and cat lady and Trump and everything. But the point is that this is an example of how our social environment is going to place expectations on me. And Ariandria, thank you so much for talking, for telling me that you love me or whatever it was. It's actually rolled past already because who even knows what these people are saying? Your social environment is going to place expectations on you. And some of those expectations are going to be very difficult. They're going to be very hard to break. But our highest moral obligation is to discover who we are and manifest that in the world. Now, I'm not necessarily giving you a time frame. Is that now? Is that next year? I don't know. But what you do have to do is manifest who you know you are at some point. Keep trying. Now, regarding morality, because this is a good question, we were not put here on earth to be miserable, despite all these really mean comments that are coming out from TikTok people. I mean, we're not here to be made miserable. It may seem like there are people on earth who are put here to make you miserable, like, many of these people who want to dump on me. But our purpose here as on earth is to figure out who we are. Now, there was an existentialist psychologist back in the 1960s. His name was Rollo May. And Rollo May did a bunch of clinical work. And in his clinical work, he found that patients who looked very deep within themselves were more content. They were happier. Patients who were content with themselves tended to be content with others being who they are. Now, I want to repeat that because I'm looking at a lot of people dropping mean comments in here who I don't think that they're happy with themselves. I don't think they're content with who they are. So they have to dump on me rather than look deep inside themselves to figure out who they are. Because I'm being told, asked when am I leaving to Canada, stuff about Jesus, stuff about Trump. Here's somebody who's not happy with people like me. Really? What the hell am I doing to you? Look deep inside. Figure out what's going on there. So rather than actually trying to talk some of this stuff here, I'm going to talk about the next part of that question, which was how do we explore our identity. Now, Rollo May, the existential psychologist that I spoke about just a moment ago, asked his patients to look within. He asked them to think about who they were, to meditate on who they are. And I think, this is good. To that, I would add, keep a notebook. Oh, dang, I forgot. I didn't bring my notebook in here, but it's a good idea to keep your notebook with you, write down thoughts that occur when you have them. And everybody's got a cell phone these days. Many phones have like an app that you can use to record yourself saying these thoughts. And then I would also say record or write what you're thinking about in a journal. Develop these thoughts. You're not going to write for anybody in particular, just write. What it does is help you develop these thoughts so that you can figure out, what are the things that you think about? Who is the person that you are? Now, the comment also brought up, in particular, role-playing games. And I think actually something like Dungeons and Dragons or something similar. I actually have a couple of examples if anybody cares. If anybody can actually even get into the comments because of people who feel that they absolutely have to tell me that Trump should be elected. I'm going to repeat. The election was earlier this week. I mean, you're way late. So in any event, I have a couple of recommendations. There's actually one called Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which maybe you look at and you go, really? But no, it's actually pretty good. The other one is called Girl by Moonlight. Both of those are pretty good role-playing games, and because they don't have a lot of like rules, they're more for exploring identity. So I would also add to this role-playing video games as well. These not just tabletop role-playing games. Lauren, thank you for asking the question. My pronouns are she, her. I will answer your question in a moment, JR Clips. I believe that role-playing games are an excellent way to learn or to practice who you think you are. And I'm saying who you think you are because this is an exploration. You want to start off with an exploration. We learn about who we are by trying things out. And role-playing games end up being very safe ways to try being who you might want to be. Now, despite RPGs being a good place to explore, I think at some point, at some point, you're going to have to bring that exploration into reality. You have to start acting as the person you want to be. So I'm going to move on in a moment here, but I've been asked a couple of times, what is my Ph.D. in? My Ph.D. is in analytical chemistry. I am a scientist. I have a background also in biology. And so I know very well the distinction between sex and gender. I've spoken about sex and gender on several occasions. I have a big video that I made on YouTube about the distinction between sex and gender, and it's a big shame that people who jump into this and have to throw some crap. Oh, my education was paid for by the left. No, my education was paid for, first of all, out of my pocket. There you go. All right, so I'm actually not going to bother with some of these comments because you're just not even interesting. Hi, Genevieve. All right, so I talked about bringing identity into the real world because you gotta. So how do we make our identity real? The comment asked if we have to recertify our identity daily. And the quick answer is yes. Kind of the long answer is yes, too. But we have to recertify this a couple of times, to a couple of places. One of them is to ourselves. And that's because we build habits by practicing them. If you want a skill, you must practice it. Like, for instance, typing doesn't seem to be a skill that many of these commenters have. And so, there you go. You might want to practice that a little bit longer. Identity, to a certain extent, is a skill. Identity is something you can develop. You can make progress in being the person you know you are. And the more progress you make, the easier it is to change your beliefs and your behavior. So if you want to change, if you end up saying to yourself, if you want to change, it's because you are not, oh, hey, 1 second. The guy who just said something about being a black woman, stand by. All right, I'm going to get to you. All right, so here we go. The more, if you want to change, in some ways, that's because you are not who you have been thinking or behaving as. You want to be this person. So remember that. Who you are today is not necessarily who you're always going to be, who you know you are inside. So yes, you do always have to recertify who you are to yourself frequently. Otherwise, you are not necessarily being the person you know you are. All right. I mentioned as well that our responsibility is to learn how to express who we are in a social environment. So make sure always to be safe. If you're going to be around some of these people who are giving me mean comments, don't put yourself in danger just to prove a point. It's easy for me to be speaking to you here from the comfort of my home. It's very easy for these people who do not have like their even names on here to make mean comments to me. There's no danger in them doing that. Donnie Rod has said, I am who I am at birth. I can't change your genetic makeup. No, I can't. But guess what, Donnie? It so happens there are humans with XX genotypes who develop female reproductive parts. And there are humans with XY genotypes who develop female reproductive parts, because genetics is messy. Whatever you think you know about biology must be wrong. So that's a shame. So any practice you're going to do in your identity may have to be in private, at least at first. I'm doing this now in public because it seems to make people happy to come and dump on me. But there you go. So a question that somebody said was, what if I want to be a black woman? Well, the thing here is one of the last parts of this question was, what if we have to change other people's minds about who we are? I don't think I have to say again, expressing our identity in the social environment is tough. Because I'm looking at people here who clearly don't want me to change. There are people who clearly don't want me to be who I am. These people, and I don't even think I have to mention any of these people by name. These people want to maintain control over me. And over you. I've seen several times somebody who said, my body, Trump's choice. Isn't that adorable? But a major purpose of a social environment is to reinforce its norms. That's what makes them norms, right? These are behavior that's supposed to be typical behavior. To address a quick comment, because I want to, Auntie just told me that God doesn't make mistakes. Yeah, I agree. God doesn't make mistakes. God made me the way I am, with a soul that's feminine and a body that was masculine. I don't know why your faith is so easily shaken that you would question your God's plan for me. I think you're going to want to talk to yourself about that and figure out what's going on in your head. All right. You are likely to find people who express their fear at you being the person you are. All right, K-Bugs, I'm finally going to answer this. What's my background in psychology? I do not have a formal degree in psychology. I have certainly studied a lot of psychology. In particular, Rollo May, which I had mentioned, an existential psychologist. So, all right. The purple hair is a personal choice. So people who express their fear at me being the person I am, like many of these people in TikTok, you poor kids, this is a passive-aggressive way to attempt to control me and to control you. They're going to spew a lot of hate, a lot of discrimination. Somebody is telling me because I have purple hair, you must know that I am toxic. I've got no idea what that's even supposed to mean. But they don't fear for me as much as they fear having to change themselves. That's the big point of this. They're going to tell me what I'm supposed to do because they don't want to have to look inside themselves and figure out who they are. It's a bummer for all of you. I'm very sorry that this is, the way you are. It's really a shame that, you think that your life should just be dumping on other people. But hey, All right. The thing is, when I changed, I have forced a change in the social environment. And if you do the same, you will. It ends up being uncomfortable. I'm looking at a ton of discomfort in the chat here from TikTok. It's uncomfortable for both the social environment and for me to change. But I don't have an obligation. Everybody who's going to make mean comments to me here, I do not have an obligation to explain to you who I am. I don't have an obligation to change your minds. You want to dump on me? My goodness. Whatever. What I have an obligation to do is to be who I am. Now remember, there are people that you're not going to change, and maybe some of these people in here are some of them, and it's not worth harming yourself for their sake. Part of the reason why I continue to do these live streams so that people jumping in. Actually, this is interesting. Here's somebody saying, as a Trump supporter, we have to support everyone, including the trans community. So not most of us. That's great. I'm glad to see that some people are not like this. So there you go. So it's not worth harming yourself. Not for these people's sake. I don't know why they don't want to listen to anybody, but they've got their bits. Now, somebody asked me, or somebody said something in the chat here, said, what if I want to be a black woman? And the comment asked me, what about falsehoods in reality? Now, I think you have to ask yourself where the falsehood lies. Is it an internal falsehood? Like, is the falsehood within your beliefs? If it's within your beliefs, I would say, first of all, the social environment likely has you believing you are somebody else. And that's simple. You just have to listen to what's inside you. Hang on, there's something somebody said about, isn't it disingenuous to call yourself a Ph.D.? I have a Ph.D. in analytical chemistry. Is it disingenuous to call myself a Ph.D. when I have a Ph.D. in analytical chemistry? Okay. So, if the falsehood's within your beliefs, you can change that. You may only have been conditioned by your social environment. And as I mentioned before, you own your identity. Society cannot override that. Cannot. Is the falsehood within how you've been behaving for however long that might be? It might be, 10 years. It might be, in my case, it was 52 years. Oh my goodness. User something or another, bunches of numbers, says, proof anyone can get a PhD. I can't wait until you get yours then. Spoken like somebody who has never been to graduate school. Good luck, my friend. All right. If the falsehood is in the way that you have been behaving, then you are only behaving in a way that is inconsistent with your beliefs. If you accept what you've done, and if you own your identity, you can change your behavior. Going to go back to my original point. You own your identity, not these people in the chat here. All right, is the falsehood external? Like, let's say you have somebody who says, just for chuckles, I know I need a moderator. I certainly do. I got to do that next time. Believe me, I'm going to do that next time. All right, is the falsehood external? Is some white man going to be able to turn into a black woman? No, obviously not. There are limitations that you can do. Limitations on what you can do. For instance, if I thought I was going to be a football player, that might be something to examine. At my age, I don't think it's going to happen. Some would say, some of them right here in the live stream, that I live a falsehood. That if I have an XY genotype, there's no way I should be wearing a skirt right now, whatever. But sometimes the external falsehood is only a clash with the social environment. All right. Hang on. So here's something from Tender Breeze. Oh, you're on YouTube. Yeah, all the antagonistic comments are coming from TikTok. You're right. It's probably better you don't see them. All right. Oh, Rosa says, this is what you're studying now in biopsych. Isn't that awesome? All right. So falsehoods. All right, I'm going to sum up here because I've gone on 23 minutes. The comment that I was asked it started off with, in hiding within reality. And I want to tell you, you don't have to hide. You should not have to hide, despite these people in the mean comments telling me lots of mean things. You do have to express yourself. If you don't express who you are, then you cannot change anything else about how you are within your social environment. But you also have to determine what limitations exist within your social environment, because it might be yourself, it might be your abilities. Like I said, I'm not going to be a football player. It might be your finances, but it could also be in your social environment and the safety that you can find within it. So to sum up, once again, you own who you are, not this person who's telling me to shoo. If you express yourself differently than who you know you are inside, it's time for a change. I made some huge changes in my life. I come up here every week and I listen to this the idiotic comments that come up in TikTok, and I believe you can do the same. There you go. All right. I do have 35 minutes. If anybody wants to ask me questions that are going to be of value, Let's see what we got here. People are being so abusive. Yes, Rosa, they are being abusive. Isn't that interesting? It's interesting to me that people have to come and dump on somebody else for reasons. I mean, I don't even know why. Is it just they feel badly about themselves? Like that's my expectation. That's my expectation here. All right. Mike J has asked, what is a woman? What an interesting question, Mike J. The quick answer here is certainly not biology. If you were going to run for XXXY, I've done enough genetics spoken enough on genetics just to say no. XXXY does not define even physicality. If it doesn't define even physicality, it certainly does not define your identity. And woman is a gender term, not a sex term, not a biology term. It is a term that has reference both to physicality and to the social environment. In which case, a woman is in part contextual to the social environment. I could talk some more, but for crap's sake. A woman, says Genevieve, is anything you make her. Like, I have a question. Because, like, what's a woman's haircut? What are women's clothes? It turns out that women's clothes, women's haircuts, are haircuts that a woman would wear or would get. Clothes a woman would get. Do I know who John Money is? That's an interesting question. So the Tickling Pickle has asked me, do I know who John Money is? Yes, I do know who John Money is. Probably, do you want me to explain who John Money is? Because, I don't know. Do I believe it's okay to transition children? Yes or no answer. So Hutzler, it looks like. Quick answer, no. I am a full member of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health and the United States Professional Association for Transgender Health. And the guidelines that we put out specify that we recommend anyway that children do not get anything more than puberty blockers. So there you go. Somebody has said a woman has a V, a man has a P. Pretty simple. Not really. What if you have a man who gets in an accident and has no more P? What happens if one of you people who think that it's my body, your choice, will come and rape me and harm me, such that that I need some sort of reconstructive surgery? It's not that simple. Nap Master B has said, please read TGE definition of woman. Really? Okay. There's a definition for woman out there. That's pretty interesting. I'd love it. Dylan Ferguson says, please debate me. Sure, I'd love to. Reach out to me. Why not? How can I consider myself educated when you argue biology? Because I think I mentioned I actually have a background in biology. And if you do not, how can you debate me? How can you consider yourself educated? I don't know. All right, let's see. Tender Bree says, question. What were some of the elements of the ways you carried yourself that you identified as male? I'm working that out myself and would like my insights. All right, that's an interesting question. Things that I identified in myself, there are some subtle cues. It's interesting. There are some subtle cues that really define like masculinity. Some of them are like looking straight at people. So I'm looking straight at the camera and I'm not going to modulate my voice very much. And I'm going to tell you, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go and do this because if you don't, there's going to be a lot of hell to pay. Now, I was using even the voice that I've used now for a couple of years, but it still ends up very masculine because those are subtler cues. Those are more behavioral. Those are more cognitive type cues. The characteristics that I ended up trying to change were, it was less about physical, how do I want to put this? Obviously, I wanted to present in a feminine way, but part of presenting in a feminine way is not necessarily clothes. It's not necessarily hair, because you can look at like Tilda Swinton and go, yeah, that's a woman. You know, you can look at trying to come up with an effeminate man, and I'm not. But the point is that it's more subtle than just your clothes, your hair, whether or not you've got HRT, things like that. So I don't know if that was enough to tell you to explain this, but if you want to talk, Tender Breeze, no joke. I mean, like send me a message. You can go to my personal website and send me an email directly. So, all right, let's see. The Tickling Pickle says, guys, even if you disagree, it's still good to listen to their point of view and learn how others feel. Well, I definitely agree with that. It would appear, Tickling Pickle, that these are not people who want to listen. They don't want to hear. They don't want to learn. And that's a shame. Like, you know, I said in a live stream, I don't know, it might have been last year, it might have been the year before, but the point is that, or the week before, sorry. I said in a live stream that ignorance is okay. Like, ignorance is all right because ignorance can be fixed. Ignorance can be fixed easily. All you have to do is learn. All you have to do is listen. Thomas has said, just don't shove your agenda on all of us. So I will point out to you, Thomas, that you came into this live stream. In fact, you came into this live stream and you watched long enough to type out your little message and hit enter. Am I forcing anything on anybody? No. Poopy Pants has said, they are listening, but I'm not saying anything logical. Okay, I'm actually just gonna let you go on that one. All right, so Thomas says, learn. No, I don't expect you to learn all about my issues. I don't either. You are free to drop out of this live stream at any time. It's really easy. You don't have to listen to me at all because you can drop out. So, all right. Silverware says, I am educated and getting circles ran around you by people of common sense. Should be a new class. I'm actually just gonna. That was actually not so fun, not so bad. It was kind of funny. So let's see. Let me see. Is there something else? Bro is missing the points left and right. Well, I guess suppose Thunder Mifflin, if anybody made a point, and if you were talking to a bro, perhaps there would be points I would recognize. All right. Hutzler says, as a Trump supporter, they support me as an adult. But even puberty blockers before 18 is abuse. Abuse. So abuse is an interesting word to use. Abuse is something that somebody does to you. It's I mean, you can do it to yourself, but abuse would imply that somebody has abused you. So puberty blockers, and feel free to continue to put this in the chat here, but puberty blockers have a long history of being used. A very long history. It's not been 10 years, it's not been 5 years, it's been more like 50. It's been many, many years that the puberty blockers have been in use. And much of the data has been collected by WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And, you can believe it or don't. That's not really up to me or to you. But, the thing is that science has indicated that puberty blockers are actually exceptionally helpful, exceptionally safe. So I understand if maybe people don't want to agree because, you just don't want to. So I'm going to move on to, let's see, Tender Breeze says, I noticed that I deepened my, oh yeah, see, this is an interesting thing. I noticed that I deepen my voice when I talk to men. When I talk to men I don't know, my default is to deepen my voice because I've always been effeminate, so I'm looking for ways to soften my defense mechanisms. Ooh, this is such a good question. Before I do, Napmaster B, who may be actually related to Grandmaster Flash, I'm kind of curious, says puberty blockers is the same medication used for chemical castration of sex offenders, you have to admit. No. Far wrong. Not even close to right. All right. So let's see. So you deepen your voice when you talk to men. So that's an interesting, it's an interesting little point there. One of the hardest things for me was to talk to my family with a different voice. It was really interesting to me that I could talk to people I didn't know, but I could not talk to the people I did know, because it's changing how you present in general. And that's difficult. You're trying to, at least for me, what was harder was to express myself in the way that I wanted to. Now, I see what you're saying. You're deepening your voice to men, which is different. With men, what's interesting to me is now I've started to pull back, because I have friends that, I've talked to for, decades. Interesting. So, so people I've talked to for decades who now when we talk, I mostly listen. It used to be a much more active part of the conversation, and now I listen. But what's interesting is that, at this point I've been able to see both sides. I've been able to, to be an executive manager in software companies, going toe to toe with tech bros. And then now I've been able to take my car to the mechanic and have the person go, so that there, they call a tire. Yeah. That's the thing that touches the road, you see. That's what keeps you going on the road. So it's interesting the way that you present, how it ends up affecting the people around you. So I don't think I answered your question very well, Tender Breeze, but there you go. All right, so Tender Breeze also says, I regret not getting puberty blockers. Many people like me, transitioning after 30, see them as a lifesaver that would have made transitioning easier. I completely agree. So I started my transition at 52. So as 52 years old, I'm now 54. It turns out that I took to estrogen very well, because it turns out that I have, we have yet really to characterize this scientifically, but data seems to indicate, I'll leave it at that I have a partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, so an intersex characteristic. And so I took to estrogen very quickly, very easily. But I agree. I mean, when I was 12 years old, that would have been 1982. And I did not, I would have loved puberty blockers. I would have appreciated the ability to express who I was. Now, in the 1970s, I did not have those choices. Like, I didn't know that those choices existed. So if I did, I think I would have wanted to explore them. I don't think my family would have allowed me to. My parents would have allowed me to. But yeah, I think puberty blockers can be life-saving. Because I will tell you, at 52, I was ready to check out. I was ready just to delete myself from the world here. And I would not be surprised if many of these people who are sending me hateful comments would be happy for that, rather than being here talking to people and alive. I find that disappointing, that there would be people who go, well, because I want to wear a skirt, I should likely be gone. But, there you go. Brandon Stained Glass, I don't know what many false narratives you are talking about. Bungles Jungle, yes, I turned 54 this year. Thank you for saying I look great. I truly appreciate that. That's kind of you. All right. Wow. It's truly amazing. I thought after the election, I'm just going to say, I thought after the election that occurred, earlier this week, and I'm going to point that out because a couple of you have still said Trump 2024. It did happen like earlier this week. So, but it is interesting to me. I thought after the election, the hateful comments would go away. They've actually gotten worse. I mean, that's crazy that you people have won. Like, why do you give a damn at this point? If you've won, then you just need to hold your politicians to restricting who I am, right? Rumblebee has said nobody said I should be gone, but they are telling me to stop pushing my delusion on everyone else. So once again, I will point out you came into my live stream. So there you go. I don't know who you people are. I certainly mean some of the people who are sending me mean comments. So Apple user, there you go. All right, JJ12345540 says, this is how you felt after the election, but I told a friend, and she took me thrifting. It's what I want, but so terrifying. So I'm sorry, JJ, I might misunderstand what you're saying. You want to transition? Is that what you're saying? Because yeah, it's really difficult to, one of the hardest parts when you're starting to go through some of the transition process, one of the hardest parts is just finding a look. You know, it took me a while to figure out, you know, what clothes would look good on my body. And the worst thing too is that your body changes, right? For like the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, it's going to keep changing. And so you'll end up buying some clothes and going, wow, these look good on me now. And then like 6 months later, you go, these look terrible. And vice versa. You know, there are things you buy and you go, oh, these are awful. And then 6 months later you go, hey, wait a minute, I filled these out. That's cool. So but it is crazy. I had the hardest time going to like a department store just like try on some skirts, you know. It shouldn't have been that difficult, but I assumed that there were going to be people who were going to go scream at me. And I think that's not a bad assumption, because I'm looking at people who want to scream at me. Once again, I will say they are screaming at me from, you know, the anonymous and very safe phone or, you know, computer that they're using. Thank you so much, Jared, for saying that you love my hair. So anyway, it's very difficult, but there you go. You wanted to tap out. Oh, I see what you're saying, JJ. I'm sorry. JJ says, wanted to tap out because of the election, but realized after talking to my friend it's just not worth it. No, I am going to tell you this. It is not worth it. I realize you aren't seeing this if you're looking at this on YouTube. What I'm getting on TikTok are people who are a minority. Now, I recognize that Trump won a majority of votes, all right? But being a Trump supporter, let me say this a different way. Voting for Trump is not the same as being one of the hateful people who you know, would drop these comments in my my TikTok live stream here. It's not worth it. Kamala Harris actually gave a very good speech right after the election, after her concession speech, and said that now is not the time to give up. Now is not the time to despair. Now is the time to fight. And now is the time to hold our politicians to what they said they were going to do. Trump has said on several occasions that he intends to limit my identity. I guess it'll be interesting to see what he thinks he can force upon me. But it's not worth ending your life over this, certainly. I'm begging you, block me now. Done, I guess. Okay. So Brandon Stained Glass says, if somebody puberty blocks for 4 years, how does one go back to normal after that? Wouldn't they, I'm not sure what they were supposed to. So can they go back to normal? Yes, you stop taking the puberty blocker. What the puberty blocker does is prevent your body from going into puberty. So when you go, you know, and that means that you start generating more testosterone, you know, you start developing the parts greater so that they start secreting either estrogen or testosterone. So when you take away the puberty blocker, what it does is just let your body go to its normal processes, and then you will develop the reproductive parts as normal, as we've seen once again for many, many years. So Ginger Face has asked me, how many people regret it? 50%, 70%? That's an excellent question. How many people regret gender-affirming care? Less than 1%. Less than 1%. So if you look at WPATH statistics, which started being started being collected, I believe, in the 1960s. WPATH wasn't formally created until 1976, but for running on 50 years as a formal organization, WPATH has gotten this data. Less than 1%, including me, I would say. Oh, Brandon, wouldn't they be 4 years behind everyone else? Well, yes, that's what a puberty blocker does. I mean, that's the point. Sure, you might be 4 years behind. What's the difference? I mean, it's the same. I mean, at this point, I'm 52 years. I was 52 years between, behind any other woman. So, or, assigned female at birth. So, gender affirming exists for the sole purpose of making money. Well, let me tell you, an optic. I just said, and I don't know if you were here, but I was ready to leave. All right. I was ready to leave the planet, kill myself off. And now I'm not. Now I'm interested in sticking around. If you want to call that just for the purpose of making money, I'm not going to be able to. I don't care if I change your mind. But there's such a difference in my life. There is such a difference. There's nothing that has made my life better like gender affirming care. Period. All right, I'm going to go back to YouTube here. JJ says, so JJ says, I assumed I was just going to receive nothing but hate, but everyone I've told is super supportive. It's an interesting point. I mean, I sent out my, my support network, I guess I would call it. When I sent out an email that said I'm going to transition gender, there were about 50 people on it. I think 50. There were two of those 50. There were two. One who said, "Listen, I don't really want to hear about it. So just don't tell me about it." And then there was one who was mean enough that I cut him out of my life. Everybody else has been supportive, very, very supportive. In fact, it's interesting. There were people. I mean, because part of the social transition process, right, is being able to. I sent an email, Grant. I mean, that's part of the coming out thing. If I can't go and be with people across the country, I'm going to send an email on coming out that I was going to transition. So, it was interesting though, because part of the social transition process, you end up going to like Taco Bell, whatever it is. You go to like Qdoba is what I'm thinking, but you go to Qdoba and you say, I need to change my my loyalty program thing, right? I got to change my name on that. And there were some people that I've told that to, and they were all women, by the way. It's very interesting. In fact, if you look at all the people screaming at me on TikTok, most of these people look like they have masculine names. I don't know how masculine they may be, but look like they have masculine names. Most women that I said, hey, I'm going to be transitioning gender, many of them just came and gave me hugs. They were like, oh, congratulations. Good for you for figuring out who you are. So it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of hate here, but it turns out that many people are supportive. And I should also point out, I did a video a couple weeks ago, might be 3 weeks ago now. But most people don't believe their politicians are qualified to talk about this kind of thing. The people who are yelling at me and telling me interesting falsehoods in my comments here, they do think that they're qualified to talk about this. But most people don't believe their politicians are. Like it was a big majority, 3 out of 4 kind of thing. And most people don't want their politicians to address gender affirming care, because what's the point? It's identity and it's not hurting people. So there you go. BB Bordeaux has said she is glad I am here and vocal and being my truth. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very important. Is it Jesus Sotelo, maybe? What is my Ph.D. in? My Ph.D. is in analytical chemistry. I started off as a molecular biologist, in particular genetics. Switched over later on into chemistry, to biochemistry, and then ended up working on semiconductor surface physics, surface electronics, really, for a Ph.D. So, all right, let me see. JJ, yeah, TikTok. You know, it's crazy to me. On YouTube videos, I tend to get more hate, but on TikTok live streams, I tend to get more hate. So I don't know. Let's see. The super supportive ones were your female friends, of course. All right, so let's see. User something or another says genetics 101 chromosomes. Not really sure where you're going with this, but if you want to talk about chromosomes, I actually have a video that I made. It's on YouTube, but the video on YouTube talks about the 23 chromosome pairs. So there's only one pair of chromosomes, of course, chromosome 23. And that one is the one that has the sex chromosomes in it. So, XX or an XY. The only thing the Y chromosome does, or the major thing that the Y chromosome does, is have one gene on it called the SRY gene, called that because it is the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome. If there's one thing I can say about scientists, we're horrible at nomenclature. But the SRY gene, following on in bad nomenclature, makes one thing called the SRY protein. And that protein ends up irritating the mother into secreting enough testosterone to cause a zygote to change its development. So this is in the womb. It takes the mother generating testosterone to make the zygote develop male reproductive parts. So there's already a causal chain going on there, right? If your Y chromosome doesn't have the SRY gene, which is possible because the SRY gene has been seen to translocate not only to the X chromosome, interestingly. So the male's contribution to sexual reproduction could have the SRY gene translocate to the X chromosome on there, leading to an XX human with male reproductive parts. But the SRY gene's also been seen to translocate to the allosomes, to chromosome pairs 1 through 22, which is sort of fascinating, right? Because now you can have somebody, doesn't matter if you have an XX or an XY genotype, you will develop male reproductive parts because the SRY gene is now on the allosomes. So in any event, there's that is not, for what it's worth, genetics 101. It was molecular biology 104. I learned that maybe it was molecular biology, but it was third year biology at University of California in San Diego. So you are trying to say genetics 101 as if it's, some really simple, very obvious process that goes on. But that was third year of biology for me. Did you make it to third year biology? Because I'm curious. Because if you didn't, then telling me I don't know what I'm talking about because it's supposed to be first year genetics. Ooh, good question, All right, so plastics. Somebody has asked me several times, plastics on epigenetics. Epigenetics is another interesting topic. So epigenetics, for those who don't know it, when you look at the human genome, there are some 20,000 to 30,000 genes that we have identified. Like if you look at the Human Genome Project, somewhere between 20 to 30,000 genes that have been identified. But that's not the same as the number of base pairs in the chromosomes. There are many more base pairs than genes, and those 20 to 30,000 genes that I just mentioned actually only represent about 10% of all of the base pairs that are there. 10%. Very, very interesting. I bring this up to say that the other 90%, some of that is redundancy. Some of that we use for redundancy, and then the bulk of it we don't even know. It's more used for regulation, gene regulation. So Bungle's jungle, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Oh, thank you. You're throwing out a definition. Epi equals after, later. These are things that effect change in genetics after the genome is set by differentiation. That was beautiful. Wow. I think I've got tears in my eyes from that. Thank you. That was very well put. The point is that there are genes that there are parts of our genotype, I should say, that that will affect gene regulation. And some of those are environment specific. So plastics, for instance, somebody asked about plastics. There are many things that will affect gene regulation. It could be you're hungry, could be you're tired, it could be, it could be a lot of things. You're cold, you're too hot. And so I guess the point here is that gene regulation is a topic that biology is still really investigating, and we don't know all the answers. So there you go. All right, so Jesus says plastics have an effect on human hormones. Now imagine a woman that's pregnant. President. I did imagine a woman who was president. It didn't happen yet. All right, T equals XXXY, right? I don't know, Jesus. I'm a little unsure what you mean by T equals XXXY. So it's the testosterone that determines what differentiation occurs in the zygote, whether the zygote creates male reproductive parts. So if you want to restate that, sure. Testosterone does not equal XXXY. The SRY gene will create an SRY protein that irritates the mother to generate testosterone. Hopefully that was more clear. All right, I'm going to go down to, let's see. So JJ also says, one of them cut your hair today and told you it would look very pretty when it's grown out. It's great when you get this kind of, when you get that kind of validation, that kind of affirmation, and that's wonderful. I appreciate that you have a friend who would tell you that. So Jesus, I'm still totally not understanding what you're saying. Oh, Bunkle's Jungle is totally true. AFAB women have testosterone. So for what it's worth, and I'm guessing some of the people who have not, people on here have not, weren't following me. This past summer, I actually went to Thailand, and I got gender affirming surgery. So I can tell you very well, what effect gender affirming surgery has on me, in particular, just the way my life went, how I feel now. But my point was going to be, I don't have any testicles. Not at all. They're gone. They have probably been burned. Oh, Kiwi, Thailand was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, they loved me too. I loved them. They loved me. They were so nice. It was so wonderful. But here's the point. I got my hormone levels checked recently. And, okay, I'm getting you a little better, Jesus. Give me a sec. I got my hormone levels checked recently, and I actually still have, the typical, a typical assigned male at birth levels are between 200 and 700. And it doesn't make a difference what the units are, although they are nanograms per deciliter. Mine was at 14. And it's interesting to me because I actually got below the limit of detection, which is about 3 nanograms per deciliter, when I had not had gender-affirming surgery. And now I have a little bit more. So that's interesting. It's fascinating to me. But yeah, the testosterone is now not being made by testicles, but being made by parts of my brain, is the point. I'm blanking on the name of it. Is the hypothalamus that makes that? I can't recall. But Ruby Roo, so we are forced change to men by our mothers. No, not when only when you're a zygote. If your mother will secrete enough testosterone, then yes. Because whether or not it's clear, the human genome is the human genome. There's not like a male genome and a female genome. There is a human genome. And that means that I have the genetics that could have produced a vagina. People who were assigned female at birth have the genetics that would have developed a penis because it's the human genome. It's hormonal balance that makes the difference in much of human development. So, okay, so I've got let me see, what was the, Jesus, okay, what if plastics influence female testosterone when pregnant? So this is a fascinating question. I mentioned there was a causal chain, right? If you make the SRY protein and the mother is not sensitive to it, she will not start to secrete testosterone. And as a result, the zygote will develop in female reproductive parts, because that's the default. The default in humans is to develop female reproductive parts unless the mother secretes enough testosterone. If you have plastics and it's influencing the blood concentration of testosterone when pregnant, then yes, maybe that's going to influence it. There are also intersex characteristics. There is an androgen insensitivity syndrome that if the zygote itself is not sensitive to the testosterone that the mother secreted, again, the zygote's going to develop female reproductive parts. And so there you go. I mean, there are a lot of things. It's a causal chain. You have to have the SRY gene on the Y chromosome. You have to generate the SRY protein. The mother has to be sensitive to the SRY protein. And then the zygote has to be sensitive to testosterone. It's a long causal chain. And while that happens frequently, the majority of the time, we don't really have statistics on how often it doesn't, because it turns out we don't do genetic testing on every single child that's born. But a quick little tidbit, a little factoid I'm going to throw out just before, and then I'm going to probably shut this down. There are over 1,200 identified intersex characteristics. Most of these are genetics. Sorry, I mean, this is 1,200 genetic characteristics, genetic variations. Over 1,200. It's guessed that 1 in 200 births display at least one intersex characteristic. So it's 1 in 200. So 1 in 200, so 0.5%. If you look at the number of births that occur every day, that means running on 40,000 births daily have intersex characteristics. Many of you out there have intersex characteristics. You just don't know it, because it may not have made a difference. I would never have known if I hadn't gone on hormone replacement therapy, because I wouldn't have checked my hormone levels. In fact, actually, it's somewhat fascinating. If I had been feeling bad, I probably would have gone to the doctor, and if he'd checked testosterone, he would have gone, you're fine there. But I couldn't use it very well, so that was the main point. So, all right, Bungle's Jungle. Yeah, no, there are many, many intersex characteristics. Most of them affect endocrinology, not necessarily physicality. Most of them affect biochemistry, but it is fascinating. So, Frankie, thank you for thanking me for taking my time to educate people. I would love for everybody here to be interested in this topic, but I don't think that I don't think it's ever necessarily going to happen. It's a bummer, because the only way that we're going to understand each other is if we talk. And I'm trying to Andrew, I don't know if you're saying that you're a low T man. There you go. See, that's an interesting tidbit. I don't know if we'll ever reach a point where we decide it's okay, or where we decide it's not okay just to drop hate and run. It would be lovely if we could talk with each other. This is why I'm talking here, trying to take questions as I can. But it's so crazy. What's the point of just shouting me down? So, Andrew, very true. If the answer is 0, probably want to get that checked. Even if you're a woman, if you're assigned female at birth, I want to say assigned female at birth. If your testosterone is 0, yeah, you got to go and get that checked. I got to tell you, every human makes both testosterone and estrogen. Men make estrogen. So everybody telling me, can you let me join? You'll have a civil conversation. So that guy, unfortunately, I'm just about to close this down. But if you'd like, yeah, let's actually send me a message on TikTok, and I would absolutely adore. Maybe we can do a podcast together if you're interested in talking about some interesting things about sex and gender, the science. So Napmaster B, how is XXXY oversimplified? I'm going to tell you. So you're saying it's the basis for human biology, as a PhD in biology would agree. Well, a PhD in biology. So first of all, if you don't have a PhD in genetics or molecular biology, that's different. You can have people who have like bioanalytics. You could have people who do I'm trying to come up with other parts that I did in biology, but a PhD is very different from the general education that you get in biology when you're an undergraduate. PhDs are very specialized. Mine was, because like I said, I mean, it's chemistry, and I did semiconductor surface electronics and structure. That's not everything about chemistry or analytical chemistry. So in any event, it is oversimplified, and I can talk about it again another time. But what I want to do now is say thank you to everybody who joined. There were people who sent me gifts. Thank you so much. People who liked all of this. I truly appreciate all of you. I am going to shut this down now, but I want to say I will be back next week, and maybe we can continue some of this conversation the way Frankie says we ought to. So thank you. Bye.